This is something I've wanted to talk about since the WoW token was introduced, but didn't really know how. Until now. GDKP runs in Classic is definitely something you would have heard of, even if it's not a type of raid that you've joined. The general overview of it, if you aren't sure, is an item drops, there's a minimum bid set for the item with a minimum incremental increase, and the person that will pay the most for the item wins it. That gold then goes into the pot, and at the end, the pot is split evenly between all people in the raid, minus a cut which goes to the organiser or organisers of the raid. I've been very vocal about my thoughts on GDKP raids over the last few years and have even interviewed one of the leaders of a very popular GDKP group on Mirage Raceway. My thoughts on GDKP runs haven't changed. They do promote RMT, they are damaging to the pug raid scene, but on paper, they're probably the most fair and efficient way of handling loot. That does sound a bit contradictory because I'm saying they're damaging to the pug raid scene and then in the next breath that they're fair and the best way of handling loot. Well, hear me out. If everyone who attends a GDKP run actually had to farm the gold themselves, either by questing or playing the auction house or using their professions, then when it comes to raid time and an item drops, if you can't afford it, the other person has just worked harder to be able to buy that item. You take your cut from the pot this week and your chances of that item would go up the following week because if the same guy joins, there's less competition on it now and you've got a bit more gold to play with than you did in the previous week. The glaringly obvious problem is that's not how it works. Instead, it's all about who can afford the most gold with real-life money. This is the point of the video where the exceptions to the rule pop up in my comment section telling me how they've done GDKP now for years and have never bought a single gold. Calm down. I believe you. But what I also believe is the gold you've been taking from the pot every week, somewhere along the line, was paid for from a dodgy website. Back in TBC, they changed how instance groups worked, which I'm sure you remember, to completely put a stop to boosting. There were many reasons for this happening, but I still firmly believe the biggest part of this was the RMT, which by the way means real money trade or trade-in if you weren't sure. They even mention RMT specifically in the post back in TBC when they were implementing the dungeon change. But the basics of even that change were people would just buy gold to fund their way to level 70 in slave pens and shadow labs instead of actually leveling. It did have a knock-on effect where less people were doing dungeons normally, there were less people in the open world questing, there was tons of spam in trade chat advertising boosts, and other side effects which I'm sure I've not even thought of to mention in this video. But ultimately, the only real reason to actually make the change that they did was it was encouraging people to go and buy gold from websites and then use it to skip essentially to the end of the game. Now they did this even though it was having no negative impact on the amount of money they were making, and when I say they, I mean Blizzard. In fact, they were probably making more from it because it meant you could have a second account just being sat boosted while you're on your main account carrying on about your business. Now, what is Blizzard's stance on GDKP raids? Well, you have to remember they're not new. There may be more of them now, but here is what they thought of GDKP raids all the way back in 2010. They said GDKP is not a support method of loot distribution. This player-driven form of looting is not currently prohibited. Please note the word currently. But players participate at their own risk. If you believe a scam has taken place, you're welcome to report it and we'll investigate your claims, taking what actions we deem appropriate based on the violations of our policies that are verified. The point of looking back at that post was the fact that Blizzard, even in 2010, were well aware of GDKPs and how they work, and probably the sort of corrupted side of GDKPs where it, is heavily RMT based. But they had no plans on making any changes. The whole point of that post was actually people being scammed out of gold. They were complaining on the forum saying the person who was in charge of the pot just logged off and we never saw him again. I must admit, I've not heard of that happening in Classic, but, I don't talk to every person that's ever done a GDKP. So like I say, they've always been aware of the system and even its potential issues, but never changed it. Now, if we think about this logically, the existence of GDKPs is partly due to how easy the content is in Wrath. It's quite easily puggable with a decent amount of organisation, but unfortunately, it's the kind of organisation you only really see in GDKP raids. We had a discussion on Discord about this last night, and the fact that we see a shift come in Cataclysm Classic, where the content is significantly harder, to a more retail style of RMT, which is guilds carrying a handful of people through the content for a fixed price, and they get a set amount of loot should the loot drop that they want. That may not be the case, it still may be rife with GDKPs, but if you've been watching me stream on kick.com/Scottejaye, what a great way to get it in, you'd see that I've even been doing some of the raid content recently in Kata, and normal is as hard as heroic is currently, or hard mode is currently in Wrath. But there would always be a way to use real life money to buy items, so there's no real way to eliminate this ability at all. It just won't happen. But it does actually make it harder to do, because there won't be the sheer amount of boost runs versus GDKP runs that we see now. I feel like that's a decent outline on the GDKP system in Classic as a whole, so why am I making this video? Well, I woke up this morning feeling pretty bloody good about myself. I stayed up late last night streaming, I joined a weekly GDKP hosted by my NA guild on Mankrik, face rolled through TOGC, and ended up with a reasonable cut at the end of just under 25k. Now, I'm not really doing GDKPs for gear. My pre-star was on his 5.2k gear score. That's fine. I'm happy with that. I don't need any upgrades to go into ICC. I'm not the sort of person sat with hundreds of thousands of gold, so I'll never be able to buy the big boy items like Reign of the Dead, and it's just my ult, so I do the GDKP more for fun than anything else. So it doesn't really matter to me about the items. What does matter to me though is taking that gold cut and using at least half of the earnings on game time. I've been doing this each week for the last few weeks, and it wasn't until I really thought about it that it dawned on me. I redeemed tokens on both my NA and EU account after the raid last night, and when you use a token, it tells you when your next sub payment's due. I'm literally subscribed on 2 accounts now until partway into 2024, just from a few GDKP runs. I can't imagine I'm the only person who's doing this, and I also understand there'll be far more people buying the token giving Blizzard money than there will be people like me doing it the other way around to save a monthly sub. But the fact I'm getting to do my favourite thing in the game, being raiding, getting gold to fund consumables, bombs, sappers and all that kind of thing for my main runs, and saving myself £20 a month from a single 1 hour raid, is ludicrous. It's almost too good to be true, you might be thinking. Here's the thing, without the existence of GDKPs, I would be constantly hovering around 2 to 3k gold like I always have throughout my entire WoW career. I don't go out farming for hours, I don't really play the auction house trying to make as much gold as possible. I've always been content if I can just afford my gems, my enchants and my raid consumables each week and have a little bit left over. That is enough for me. So having the gold to buy WoW tokens for game time would just be out of the question without the existence of GDKPs. This is all hopefully by now starting to paint a nice picture of what the point of this video is. But one last point before we move on. RMT is of course rife in every GDKP, and you would think the addition of the WoW token would make that worse. But I actually truly believe it hasn't had an effect at all. I haven't seen a massive rise in the cost of items from pre-token to post-token, and you know why that is? The people that were buying gold before are still buying gold now from exactly the same places, and the people who wasn't buying gold before are not now buying gold just because the token's there. They're still not buying gold. And when I say the people who are buying it still are getting it from where they always have got it, is why on earth would they pay $15 for 4.2k gold on NA realms when they could spend the same amount of money and get triple that from dodgy websites? If you aren't aware, let me pull the Val back here. People who buy obscene amounts of gold to buy things like Valanir, which fragments are crazily going from anything from 15k each upwards, won't be spending $500 on it from gold websites and risking getting banned. They won't get banned for buying the gold, because it's still cheaper to have a burner account, also known as an account you'll receive the gold on from the gold seller, then send it onto your main account, or even a middleman account before it lands on your main account. They're not going to buy the WoW token. So yes, buying gold, using a small portion of the gold to pay for game time on a burner account whilst also keeping your main account perfectly safe, is more worthwhile and profitable than buying a WoW token. It is literally mental. Now, I'm buying up as many WoW tokens as I can each week after a GDKP. I want my WoW account to be funded until 2025 to 2026 as soon as possible, because it's going to save me money IRL, and I could see things changing. It's not in Blizzard's interest to let GDKPs live anymore, and I don't want you like GDKP lovers to start jumping on the hate bandwagon here, because this is not me saying that they should change it. It's me looking at it from a business perspective, you know, thinking, well, if I was Blizzard and I was watching all of these people having ridiculous amounts of gold at the end of a raid, and what they're doing with that gold is buying game time, which is game time that we could be charging them for, it kind of makes sense that GDKPs were eliminated. They've said in the past they wouldn't do anything about them, but they also said in the past they wouldn't make changes to classes, and look where we are now. Doing a 1 hour raid a week and the game is free to play Doesn't sound like a sustainable business model to me. I want to be perfectly clear, I am a hypocrite. I have said I don't like GDKP raids for years, but I do them every week. That's because, especially since TOGC released, I see literally no negatives as a regular player to not do them. If you have an ult that has high enough gear score to get in a run, you absolutely should be doing your best to get in a GDKP each week, to just use that ult to pay for your game time. It's absolutely mental to not do that, but how many people need to be doing it before Blizzard are like, okay guys, that's it, GDKPs are banned? This I do not know, but it is something I can kind of see coming. Any trading of mass amounts of gold or using the add-on for GDKP runs will be punished. I can just see them doing something because, like I say, it's not in our interest for them to do something, but it's definitely in theirs. And let's face it, if they was to get rid of them now and blame RMT for the primary reason of it being banned, we would see straight through it. It's obvious it's because of the WoW token, but I for one would at least understand their motivations. They are a business at the end of the day, and their ability to make profit means bigger development teams, more cash flow to work on new projects, and ultimately give us a better experience. You may be sat there thinking, well, there must be some people who do GDKPs buying the WoW token. Yeah, there probably is, and you're probably right. But using the NA WoW token again as an example, it's 4.2k. That is so much of an insignificant amount of gold for $15. That won't even get you a Trophy of the Crusade in a GDKP run. An item that in our main runs, 4 weeks into TOGC, we can't even give away. We see trophies going for around 12k. You'd need to spend $45 on a 245 piece of gear. You can get lucky and get in VOA, or even get a chest crafted of the same item level. And that's just a trophy for around $45. Good luck getting Death's Choice or Rain, where they're going for 150,000 gold, and you're getting your gold just from WoW tokens. It's just kind of obvious that's not where people are getting these massive amounts of gold. The people who buy WoW tokens are actually people like me before doing GDKPs. So I mean, before I just started doing these weekly when TOGC launched, I'd never done GDKPs, but I had bought tokens. Someone who's lazy and just wants a quick 4k gold to tide me over for another couple of months of consumables and gems and stuff like that. I'm being 100% open and honest here. I would and did buy tokens for exactly that. When we was in a pug on EU, I bought 2 WoW tokens just to buy the mammoth mount so everyone could buy water because we didn't have a mage. I could have just gone and bought the water from a vendor and then traded it out, you know, in hindsight, but gin and tonic is a hell of a thing. The point is, Blizzard will still make plenty of money from the WoW token, but with far less people having the ability to buy game time should they implement barriers to GDKP raids. So a change here at some point I kinda see being inevitable. Will there still be people sat on huge amounts of gold and never having to pay their sub? Sure there will be. But unless those people all of a sudden turn into the nicest people on earth and start handing out free gold to everyone in Dalaran, there'll be nowhere near the ease of redistribution of that gold to 24 other people. If Blizzard was to make a change, everyone will focus on the negatives. The fact that they can't make easy gold anymore, or can't just go and buy 100k gold and buy whatever items they want in a week. But there are positives that would come out of it. The people who don't do GDKPs because they don't like them or refuse to buy gold or whatever their reasons actually are, we'll have a larger pool of players to pug with. Soft reserve runs would be more popular again, and actually, that's probably my favourite form of a pug loot system. And it would actually even keep people playing. People who have complained in comments on YouTube videos right here on this channel, saying they've quit because they can't find pugs, because they don't want to do GDKP runs, there would be more people playing the game, possibly, with GDKPs not existing. Don't get me wrong, I do believe the whole not being able to find normal groups is a bit of an exaggeration because I've been in plenty of non-GDKP runs even in the last couple of weeks. But like I said right at the start, you never get the level of organisation in a normal pug of which you do in a GDKP run, because gold and essentially real-life money is on the line in that raid. So what do you think? Will Blizzard make a change to GDKPs eventually to ensure they can continue to line their own pocket, or will they ride it out until Cataclysm, where I see a small decline in GDKPs anyway? Do you enjoy GDKP runs? Would you rather they was in the game, out the game? Do you think they have a positive effect on the game, a negative effect on the game? Put any of your thoughts in the comments below, and you haven't got to agree with me, like most of you don't normally agree with me, because all I do is just do a short video giving you my feelings, my points of view on a topic. And this is quite a spicy one because there'll be a die-hard group of people that love GDKP runs, and then there'll be another group of people that hate GDKP runs. So this sort of video is never going to please anyone. I've just tried to lay out the facts, and that's it. How, if they didn't exist, Blizzard absolutely would make more money. The fact that they are heavily RMT driven, which if anybody tells me that they're not in the comments, you have got to be having a laugh. So as always, like, subscribe, make sure you do smash that like button. Many of you leave without, if you didn't like it, press dislike, I don't care, but press one of them so I know if you enjoyed the video or you didn't enjoy the video. Consider joining the channel as a member and make sure you come follow me over on Kick to see me doing lots of RAF, lots of CAR, lots of everything really. See you on the next one.